In a quiet town where every sunset covers the streets with a soft golden light, Kate's life is marred by her encounters with a mysterious pale-faced man. This mysterious stranger, as if cut from the very fabric of time, appears out of nowhere as the last rays of the sun slip across the earth, revealing the evening veil. It was that evening 2 years ago that was the turning point in Kate's life. That meeting happened in the library, that very haven of silence and knowledge where time seems to slow down. Surrounded by antique books and dusty shelves, under the flickering light of the passing day, Kate saw him for the first time. There was nothing special about that evening, nothing that heralded a change in her life, except that the sun was setting, wrapping everything around her in its last parting rays. But the meeting with this man, whose face was so pale it seemed devoid of life, was forever etched in her memory. The man stood among the rows of books, his gaze staring into the distance as if he saw something beyond the reach of ordinary mortals. Kate couldn't tear her gaze away, mesmerized and frightened by his presence at the same time. He seemed to her not just a man, but something much more, a mystery she was eager to solve. Their gazes met for a moment, and that moment seemed like an eternity. Not a word was spoken, but there was something in that look that made her heart beat faster. 2 years have passed since then, but the memory of that meeting never leaves Kate. She keeps going back to that moment over and over again, trying to understand who that man was and why their paths crossed. Every now and then, as the sun slopes toward sunset, she feels an irresistible urge to return to the library, hoping to meet him again. But the mysterious pale-faced man remains only a shadow flickering in her memories, a reminder that some encounters can change us forever, even if we never see the one who left an indelible mark on our soul. Kate's awakening came suddenly, broken by the voice of her husband Ron, who asked her with concern in his voice if some nightmare was tormenting her. The dream was so real that for a moment she herself could not distinguish where the dream world ended and reality began. But in the face of Ron's concern, she gathered the strength to smile and assured him that everything was fine, that the night had passed peacefully and no dark dreams had disturbed her. They both stood up, and Kate decided to lightly help Ron get ready for the hard day ahead. The small ritual of tying the tie they shared each morning was something of a quiet morning greeting for both of them, a moment of tenderness and care that helped start the day on the right note. Ron left the house, heading off to work, leaving Kate alone with her thoughts. Left alone, Kate couldn't shake the feeling of her heart sinking every time she looked at Ron. This feeling, awakened in her after her encounter with the mysterious pale-faced man 2 years ago, had not left her and had become even stronger lately. Every morning as she watched her husband, she felt her inner world fill with a strange awe and incomprehension. In those moments, she felt like there was an invisible wall between her and Ron, created not so much by real problems as by her own inexplicable feelings and memories of the meeting that had turned her world upside down. Those mornings spent together were becoming a time for Kate to reflect on how much her life had changed in those 2 years. She wondered if it was really possible to change so profoundly and irresistibly because of a single encounter, or if there was always a feeling in her soul that was just waiting for the right moment to awaken. But deep down, Kate knew that no matter what was going on in her heart, she had to find a way to reconcile her past, her present, and a future in which Ron played no small part. There was always an invisible shadow of misunderstanding and lack of love that lingered in Kate's life from her earliest years. Her heart was shrouded in mystery as to why it was that she, with an inner world as rich as that of her sister Rosalind, remained in the shadow of other people's feelings and predilections. This question became even more puzzling and agonizing after Ron, a man with not only a magnificent character but also the ability to see the beauty of the soul, chose Kate to be his wife. He was like a light in the dark realm of her loneliness, but that light seemed so unattainable given his unwavering love for Rosalind. Love seemed like something that wasn't meant for her but for her sister. Rosalind had always been like a magnet for the feelings and attention of those around her, especially their father, who seemed to be able to care only for Rosalind, leaving Kate in the shadow of his indifference. The tragedy of losing her mother immediately after giving birth left an indelible mark on Kate's life, for it was this sad twist of fate that seems to have determined her father's attitude towards her. She was like a ghost, unseen and unappreciated, in a world where all attention and love was directed toward Rosalind. Kate's existence was thus overshadowed by the shadow of misunderstanding and invisibility in the eyes of those who should have been her closest people. The inability to understand why love and attention were so generously bestowed upon Rosalind while she, Kate, received only crumbs, became the main mystery of her life. Yet, despite all these obstacles, Ron saw something in her that had gone unnoticed by others. And this act of love and choice became a ray of light for Kate, pointing the way to self-acceptance and the opportunity to be loved for who she is. The burden Kate carried on her shoulders was weighted down by the mark of shame placed on her by her own family. In this world where she felt like an outcast among those who should have supported and loved her, comfort came to her in a most unexpected guise. It appeared in the form of a guy with hair the color of winter snow, possessor of the mysterious beauty of the sunset sky, who seemed to be like a light at the end of the long tunnel of her loneliness. The moment their gazes first crossed, Kate felt a sudden heartbeat, as if a flock of butterflies had flown up in her chest. The encounter was so unexpected that she, losing control with excitement, dropped the book from her hands. Bending down to pick her up, Kate was amazed to find that the young man had also bent down to help her. That gesture, simple but full of care, was something magical and indescribable to her, something she wouldn't soon forget. He was like a bridge spanning the abyss of her loneliness to someone who could possibly understand her. There was something deeply symbolic, hidden in that momentary exchange of gestures, as if for the first time Kate had found an echo of her own soul in another person. Saying thank you to him, the only word she could squeeze out of herself, she hurried away, caught up in a whirlwind of emotions. Her heart was beating so fast that words seemed impossible, and the only way out was to flee from this unexpected but powerful feeling of excitement and attraction. Such a moment was a breaking point for Kate, symbolizing the possibility of a new chapter in her life, a chapter where she could find the understanding, acceptance, and perhaps the love she had been waiting for. But at the same time, her reaction to this encounter showed the depth of her insecurity and fear of the possibility of being rejected, which made her run away before she could learn more about the man with hair like snow. Kate found in the library a refuge not only for her mind, but also for her heart. This place became an arena for daily observation of someone who unknowingly became a source of light for her in her dark life. Hiding behind shelves of books, she watched him, this guy with hair like winter hoarfrost who seemed to carry his own weather, enveloping himself in a cloud of brooding and silence. His gaze, often staring off into the distance as if through the walls of the library, somewhere far away where he alone could travel, made him even more mysterious and appealing to Kate. Day after day, without missing a beat, he appeared in the library like clockwork, and every time Kate felt her heart sink at the sight of him. She hesitated to raise her eyes and meet his gaze for fear of breaking the fragile thread of connection she thought existed between them, even if invisible. Her looks, filled with longing and unrevealed feelings, found no response in his eyes because he was not even aware of her secret presence. And then suddenly, his daily visits stopped. The library seemed to lose a part of its life with his absence. The days without him stretched slowly and endlessly, filling Kate's heart with anxiety and uncertain foreboding. She waited and hoped and silently prayed for his return, but his place remained empty. And then, like a thunderclap, came the news that pierced her heart through and through. Rumors of his death spread faster than autumn leaves falling to the ground. In that moment, Kate's world collapsed, leaving her alone with the deafening silence of her grief. All that remained of her secret attraction was a shadow of sadness, light and weightless, like a breeze that could be felt but never held. Her days in the library were no longer filled with secret surveillance. They became a silent mourning for the lost opportunity to feel intimacy with someone who could understand and share her hidden world. Not having had the strength even to look into his eyes in his lifetime, now she would never know if their gazes could have met in common understanding and sympathy. With this loss, Kate is faced with the harsh reality of her existence, where the only witnesses to her quiet grief are the silent books and dusty shelves of the old library. That day, as Kate stood amidst the mournful silence, surrounded by the modest crowd gathered to bid the prince farewell, she heard his full name, Edwin Arthur Vond, for the first time. She couldn't take her eyes off the coffin where lay the one who was not just an idol to her, but her unspoken first love. The event seemed to her unworthy of the prince's high status. It was too impersonal and meager, not reflecting the depth and significance of the loss. Kate had always admired Edwin from afar, watching him where she could sneak up unnoticed. His appearance, full of grace and beauty, seemed to her something unearthly, and even in these last moments when he lay motionless, she could not escape the feeling that he was only asleep. A quiet hope was ripening in her heart. Could Edwin have known of her existence, of the quiet admiration she harbored for him, lurking in the shadows of his life? The thought of having to let him go before she'd even exchanged a word with him filled Kate's heart with bitterness and longing for missed opportunities. The first love he'd never known was leaving with him, leaving behind only a heavy emptiness and silent questions that would never be answered. This moment was a critical turning point for Kate, when she realized that time is inexorable, and every moment not filled with meaning and living feelings is a missed opportunity that will never come back. After her bitter farewell to Edwin, Kate, as if trying to find solace in a world that suddenly seemed very different to her, she turned to Ron with a promise that sounded more like an echo of her inner emptiness than a sincere assurance of the future. She had promised Ron the pursuit of a beautiful life, a life in which she hoped she could find some meaning after her loss. Ron, for his part, sought support from her family, particularly her father, hoping for a favorable alliance and the opportunities such an alliance could provide him. Inside, Kate dreamed of escape, of breaking free from the shackles of her current existence where every day reminded her of her lost love. Her desire to leave the house, where every corner reminded her of an unfulfilled future with Edwin, had become almost an obsession. She'd agreed to marry Ron, presenting him as salvation even though she had no deep feelings. In her mind, it was a union based on mutual respect and kindness, a chance to start fresh. But all her hopes and illusions dissipated like smoke when Kate came across Ron's love letter to Rosalind. This discovery was like a stab in the back for her, a reminder that even in her attempts to escape the pain, she couldn't avoid more betrayals and disappointments. The letter was a clear sign that even in the marriage that Kate had envisioned as a safe haven from her troubles, there were lies and deceit. This discovery pushed her to realize that the way forward was not in easy consolations and escape from reality, but in accepting herself and the world as they are, with all their imperfections and unexpected twists of fate. On the threshold of sleep, as Kate's consciousness floated gently on waves of memories and dreams of what might have been if she had found the courage to turn to Edwin just once, she was plunged into absolute silence. Her musings on how their fate might have turned out had they crossed paths in a more meaningful way were suddenly interrupted by a sharp, piercing scream. That sound, sharp as an icy wind in the stillness of the night, instantly snapped her out of the embrace of sleep. Rosalind, Kate's sister, asked sarcastically how she'd slept, even though she'd ruined the dream herself. The moment was like a thunderclap for Kate. She found herself not in the familiar surroundings of her own bedroom, but within the walls of the house that had once been her 16th birthday present. She found herself back in her old home, a place filled with memories and emotions she had tried so hard to get away from. This sudden awakening in the past, in a space from which Kate had long since withdrawn, left her in a state of profound daze. Her heart filled with a mixture of feelings, nostalgia for bygone days, and worry about what the consequences of this unexpected return might be. Waking up in the old house as if a symbol of returning to her roots, to the beginning of her journey, has challenged her to rethink her path, the choices she has made, and perhaps find a new way forward, a way that will help her come to terms with the past and move on to a future filled with new hopes and dreams. In one unpredictable moment, Kate's life took an unexpected turn when Rosalind, like a force of nature, burst into her calm, taking her under her arm and heading straight for their father. Rosalind, with undeniable confidence in her voice, pronounced that her father wished to see Kate at once on the subject of the marriage. Kate, whose heart had already been given to another during 2 years of happy marriage, felt a wave of exasperation at such a statement. After all, in Rosalind's opinion, Kate, being only 18 years old, could not have had time to get legally married, which sounded absurd to Kate. Upon arriving at their father's house, a scenario shrouded in an aura of uncertainty and filled with surprise came to their attention. There they ran into Ron, who seemed to have found a youthfulness and freshness different from his usual appearance. The air was saturated with the invisible energy of the meeting as father, like a character from some long-forgotten play, greeted Ron, Kate's husband, with appropriate grandeur and formality. That greeting sounded like he was seeing him for the first time, even though Ron was already a part of their lives as Kate's past and possibly future life partner. Thus, before the audience unfolds a dramatic scene in which the past, present, and future intertwine in a single dance of fate, where every action and every word is filled with multifaceted meaning and deep emotions. The moment Ron introduced himself with the utmost seriousness and officialism, as if they were actually seeing each other for the first time, Kate felt an incredible déjà vu that made her heart sink with amazement. His words, sounding like an echo from the past, made her remember the very day 2 years ago when their lives had first crossed. The realization that she might be standing on the threshold of time, in a moment that was already familiar to her, filled her mind with a mixture of disbelief and insight. She decided to take this opportunity to scrutinize Ron's every word, looking for familiar motifs in his speech that would confirm her suspicions about going back in time. And so, like an actor following the script of a well-known play, Ron expressed his unwavering desire to share his life with Kate, proposing marriage to her just as he had done 2 years earlier. It was like magic that transported Kate back in time, giving her a second chance to rewrite her history. Memories of the day when their destinies first became one pierced through her, causing a storm of emotion and revelation. This time, armed with knowledge and understanding she hadn't had before, Kate decided to reject Ron's offer, determined that she wouldn't make the same mistakes. She was determined to change her future, because now she had a unique opportunity to look at her life from a completely different angle and make decisions that would lead her to a different, perhaps brighter horizon. When Kate took her hand away distantly but firmly, opening the door for Ron and her entire family to an unexpected future without this marriage, tension hung in the room, thickened by mutual amazement. Ron, though stunned by this unforeseen rejection, maintained an outward calm, saying that the last thing he wanted was to impose on a woman who had no reciprocal feelings for him. This moment had Kate on the cusp of thinking about what had brought her back in time on this particular critical day of their meeting. Upon reflection, Kate suddenly realized that now, in this interweaving of time, Edwin, the man she still loved, was still alive. This realization exploded in her mind with a bright light of hope and possibility. Glancing at her watch, she realized that time was running out, and if she wanted to change her future, she had to act now. Without the slightest hesitation, Kate decided to escape from this place of fateful decisions straight to the library where she could meet Edwin, her true love. There was a spark of hope in her heart that this time she would find the strength to talk to him, to open her feelings, to correct past mistakes, and perhaps rewrite the history of their relationship on a new, happier note. With this decision, Kate felt like she was not just the heroine of her own story, but the guardian of her future happiness, ready to overcome all obstacles to true love. She was sure that meeting Edwin would open the door to a new world where she could live the life she had always dreamed of, but could hardly find, following the path set out by the circumstances of her first meeting with Ron. As she hurtled through space, her heart beat with such force and determination, as if each beat separated life from death. She was sure she would find a way to save Edwin from his imminent end. Her feet, like two arrows carrying her through time and space, led her to the library, a place where time seemed frozen in eternal sunset, where Edwin usually found refuge among the pages of long-read books. When she entered, she saw him. Edwin, absorbed in reading Sequence in the Loop, was, as always at this time, in complete ignorance of how close the collapse was. This time, for the first time, she found the courage to approach him, overcoming the invisible wall that had previously seemed insurmountable. Her hand outstretched toward Edwin was full of hope and memories of a day they would both rather forget, the day of the funeral. In that moment, the world around her seemed to freeze in anticipation, and her hand felt the unexpected warmth of his skin when she touched him, which caused a flood of tears to flow uncontrollably down her cheeks. But a moment full of hope and pain, for love returned, was cruelly cut short. Edwin, with a reaction foreign to that warm moment, pushed the girl's hand away, for to him Kate was but a stranger. His actions, so abrupt and unexpected, like a wind dispersing fog, left her in a state of shock and incomprehension, shattering the bridges she had hoped to build between their divided hearts. Edwin, oblivious to the storm of feelings sweeping over Kate, continued on his way past her as if their recent interaction had been but a passing dream, not worthy of attention. Desperate to hold on to the moment, Kate reached out her hand, trying to stop him, as if trying to grasp at an elusive hope. Edwin's answer, however, was sharp and unexpectedly cold. His words, filled with anger and incomprehension, were like a cold shower upon her. He declared that he did not know her, rejecting any attempt at explanation or rapprochement. Struck by the sudden realization of her mistake, Kate let him go, leaving the past to slip through her fingers. Though she had anticipated the possibility of rejection, the depth of his indifference surprised her. Kate's heart sank, and she felt her soul fill with an icy chill at the realization of how much they were strangers to each other. But then, like a ray of sunshine through the clouds, realization came to her. In that moment, she realized that his reaction had been justified. After all, how else was a man supposed to act when he suddenly felt the touch of a stranger? It was a natural defense, an instinctive desire for self-preservation that left no room for reproach. In a world where time is not so much a sequence of events as a path to righting wrongs and obstacles, Kate has found the opportunity to become the architect of her own destiny. With incredible courage and determination in her heart, she decided to use her gift of going back in time as a chance to save Edwin. Edwin, whose coldness and aloofness would have repulsed anyone, had become something much more than an acquaintance to her. Deep down, Kate was sure that everyone deserved to be saved, no matter how they behaved, and especially if it could have prevented their demise. Under the weight of that decision, she headed once again to the place where words and knowledge take on eternity, the library. That day in the library was unlike any other. The sunlight playfully streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the dusty shelves of books, creating an atmosphere of magic and possibility. Kate, pacing between the rows, found Edwin immersed in reading. His concentrated look, bathed in the soft light of morning, seemed almost cartoonish. Not wanting to break the idyll of silence, but realizing the need to get his attention, Kate moved closer. With a slight smile, full of warmth and sincerity, she wished him good morning. It was more than a greeting, it was an expression of concern and hope for a new beginning. The gesture was a bridge between their worlds, a call to notice each other amidst the endless sea of stories in the library. Kate's sudden intrusion into his world of books and solitude caused Edwin a storm of indignation. He wasn't used to being distracted in this way, especially when it came to strangers invading his personal space for no apparent reason. His reaction was a sharp order for Kate to leave the room immediately, reflecting his irritation and desire to get back to the way things were. However, Kate, driven by fear for his life and a desire to change his fate, couldn't just back down. Her attempts to persuade Edwin to listen to her have met with a wall of incomprehension and unwillingness to listen to a stranger who is interfering with his plans for no apparent reason. But then, in a fit of desperation and realizing that time was playing against them, Kate shouted, urging Edwin to refuse the carriage ride to the royal palace, predicting his death if he ignored her warning. This unexpected statement shocked Edwin. For the first time in the entire conversation, he felt the weight in her words, the invisible thread of seriousness stretching through the improbability of the situation. However, pulling himself together and regaining his usual sharpness and skepticism, he pointed out that death was the inevitable end for everyone, trying to minimize the impact of her words on his decision. This moment was the culmination of the confrontation between the urgent, restless urgency with which Kate was trying to warn him and his innate skepticism in the face of the unknown. Kate, stunned and a little lost by the unexpected turn of the conversation, found herself facing Edwin's penetrating gaze. Her warning of mortal danger instead of the expected reaction of censure or fear sparked Edwin's interest in the source of her knowledge. His question about how she knew about his upcoming visit to the palace caught Kate off guard. Her hesitation and uncertainty in answering only increased his skepticism and his conviction that he was facing only an attempt to interfere in his private affairs. With a tinge of irony and suspicion in his voice, Edwin suggested that Kate not answer, as he had little interest in trying to explain her inexplicable premonition or knowledge. He simply walked past her, urging her to forget her interference in his life and not expect him to place blind faith in the stranger's words. However, even at this point, when he seemed to have finally rejected Kate's attempts to influence his decisions, she found the strength to stop him again. This act of desperate persistence on Kate's part emphasizes her unwavering determination to change the course of events, despite Edwin's apparent rejection of her attempts to intervene. In this confrontation between the will and beliefs of each of them, the viewer sees not only Kate's struggle for Edwin's life, but also the clash of two worlds. One where premonitions and knowledge of the future can change fate, and another where rational skepticism and distrust of unverified sources of information remain unyielding. Overcoming her inner barriers, Kate struggled to reveal to Edwin the depth of her experiences and the motivation behind her unexpected time travel. Her words were imbued with pain and sincerity as she confessed that it was impossible to stay away, knowing of the impending tragedy that was to cut short Edwin's life. The heavy burden of foreseeing his death by the wreck of the carriage rested upon her heart, and it was the urgent reason why she had resolved to take such a desperate step to change the course of events and save him. Kate realized that her words might seem unbelievable to Edwin because the story of time travel and preventing death sounded like something out of the realm of fantasy. However, she wasn't looking for faith or approval in his eyes. She was driven only by the need to act on her heart and convictions. So despite the doubts that could certainly engulf Edwin, Kate stood firm. Her vow, soaked with despair and hope, sounded in the air like a final argument designed to prove the sincerity of her intentions and the depth of her feelings for Edwin. Suddenly, like a glimmer of hope in a dark room, Edwin opened the door to the possibility that Kate's words held some truth. This moment was a ray of light for her, because even the smallest possibility that she was being heard and trying to be understood was inspiring and empowering. However, Edwin quickly misspoke, not making it clear that he was completely giving in to her words, clarifying that he didn't say he believed her 100%. There was caution and distrust in his words, which was to be expected given the absurdity of the situation. Rather than directly expressing his belief in her words, Edwin preferred to emphasize that he was only considering her claims as a possibility, maintaining a healthy skepticism. In the next moment, he posed Kate a sharp question directed to the very heart of her motivation. What benefit could she derive from this caution? The question was crucial, for to Edwin the situation seemed more than strange. They didn't know each other, and Kate seemed to have no logical reason to risk her reputation or even her mental health by announcing her ability to travel through time. Thus, Edwin sought to find ulterior motives behind her act based on the logical assumption that every action has a reason, especially when it has such serious consequences. His gaze was filled with skepticism and curiosity, for in his world every act was guided by the pursuit of some purpose or gain, and the idea of gratuitous assistance, especially with such a high level of personal risk, seemed foreign to him. Kate was facing an unspeakable dilemma, struggling with inner demons that fed on her remorse. A fire of guilt flared in her heart because she had never found the strength to overcome the invisible barrier that separated her and Edwin. Edwin's death was an unexpected and cruel reminder of lost opportunities and unspoken feelings. Kate realized that this silence of hers had become an invisible burden that she would pull through her life. Suddenly, as if fate had decided to intervene in this unsolved puzzle of feeling, Edwin, as if feeling the gravity of the moment, made a suggestion which, like lightning, pierced the atmosphere between them. He speculated that Kate might have harbored deep feelings for him, perhaps even love. Her reaction to his words was immediate and undeniable. His eyes reflected the truth of his speculation, as if he had seen the hidden page of her soul that she had tried so carefully to hide from the world, and especially from him. This moment was the unraveling of a secret she had hoped to keep deep in her heart, but which now lay naked and vulnerable before them. The tension between Kate and Edwin reached a climax in this scene, and each of their exchanges of words only added to the poignancy of the moment. Trying to ease the tension, Kate brushed off the thought of love as if it were just a joke, to which Edwin, not missing an opportunity to play on her feelings, offered an ironic suggestion of hate. It made Kate blush even more, as if her heart was trapped between Edwin's playful words and her own confused emotions. Edwin, sensing that the conversation was reaching a dead end and not wanting to feed on empty hopes, decided to end this fruitless exchange of sentiments. He bluntly told Kate that if the only thing driving her was guilt, he wasn't going to play that game. With those words, he turned to leave, leaving behind words of disappointment in his expectations of a different outcome to this encounter. Kate, lost in the tangle of her feelings, was still unable to decipher the deeper meaning of his last words. Trying to stop Edwin for the third time, Kate met his growing irritation. He turned to her to ask why he could not leave in the carriage, as if he sought in her answer a last chance of understanding. This moment was a test for both of them, for Kate to find the words that could express everything she was feeling, and for Edwin to find the moment of truth where he could see Kate's true emotions behind her attempts to stop him. At this critical point in their relationship, Edwin posed a question to Kate that made her heart sink. He wanted to know what arguments she had against his leaving his life, what reasons she could give to convince him to stay. This question, full of despair and hidden hope, set off Kate's inner storm of emotion and reflection. She found herself struggling to find those words that could be a beacon to Edwin in his dark thoughts, words that could change the course of their destinies. In an attempt to find an answer, Kate suddenly, as if pressured by a buildup of feelings, blurted out that she didn't like Edwin. That scream was full of pain and frustration, the emotional outburst that precedes true discovery. In the next instant, she took a step she'd never before dared to take. She confessed her love for him. It wasn't just a confession, it was a powerful, shattering revelation of her deepest, truest feelings that she'd been hiding inside. Kate confessed her love not for herself, but for him, to let him know that his life mattered, that there was a reason to live, a love that could overcome the darkest corners of despair. This moment was a turning point for both of them. For Kate, it was a release from the weight of unspoken words that had been weighing on her heart for a long time. For Edwin, however, it was perhaps the one ray of light that could shine through the fog of his doubts and despair, showing him the way to embrace a life full of feelings and emotions, including the love that was now openly recognized. Edwin, shrouded in the shadows of his heavy inner world, suddenly burst out laughing with emotion. His laughter was full of bitter irony as he expressed a strange desire to experience the moment of death again, but this time inside the very carriage that had become for him a symbol of loss and despair. With undisguised sarcasm, he stated his desire to experience this extreme act of despair, adding that he wished this moment would hurt everyone he had ever loved or held dear. This revelation was eerie and incomprehensible, for the desire to see loved ones suffer for their loss was not in the mind of a sane person. Kate, who witnessed this confessional monologue, sensed in his words something more than a fleeting outburst of emotion. She saw before her a man in a deep mental pit, broken by life's circumstances, waging an internal struggle with his own demons. Her intellectual curiosity was instantly aroused as she sought to understand the ordeal he had gone through to become this way. What events could have changed a person so much, causing them to desire their own demise in hopes of hurting others? That question echoed in her head over and over again, leading to a chain of thoughts about how complicated and unpredictable human fate could be. In an atmosphere saturated with misunderstanding and heavy emotions, Kate dared to ask Edwin a question that she hoped would help her plumb the depths of his twisted soul. She cautiously asked what he expected to gain from his own demise and why he was so frantic to leave this world. The question sounded like a challenge, an attempt to find the one answer that could explain his desire to hasten his departure into oblivion. Edwin, as if he had been expecting this question, fell for a moment into deep, serious thought. His face was frozen in an expression full of mystery and untold words. Then, with slow and deliberate steps, he approached Kate, as if he wanted to make sure that his words would be heard only by her. Leaning down to her ear, he whispered an answer that should have solved the riddle of his pain and desire for self-sacrifice. The whisper was so personal and meaningful that Kate felt the weight of every word spoken, as if they held the key to understanding his deepest feelings. After Edwin had shared his thoughts with her, as if he wanted to emphasize the finality of his decision and the impossibility of changing his course, he ordered her to stay out of his sight again. The act not only emphasized the seriousness of his intentions, but also left Kate in a state of deep reflection on the complexity of the human soul and how sometimes the most desperate decisions seem like the only way out of suffering. In the deepest recesses of her mind, Kate couldn't find peace, the worry about Edwin enveloping her thoughts like a fog creeping into every crevice. Edwin's words that death would bring him salvation echoed in her heart, fueling a wave of worry and anxiety she couldn't calm. Those words didn't just resound in her head, they vibrated like a musical note touching the deepest corners of her soul. Edwin seemed to be seeking refuge from life itself, striving to find a way out of the endless maze of pain and suffering that surrounded him. Kate felt helpless, for she didn't know how she could help him, how she could reach out to him in a way that could get him out of this dark place. And in this maelstrom of thoughts and worries, she suddenly fell asleep, as if her consciousness itself had decided to give rest from the incessant worries. Sleep, however, did not bring relief. On the contrary, it plunged Kate into a world of even greater mystery and uncertainty. She found herself in a strange, completely white room with no windows or doors or any furniture. The space, devoid of any detail or color, resembled a blank canvas ready to have the world painted on it. In such an environment, Kate felt both imprisoned and liberated from all earthly problems. It was a place where time seemed to stop, and reality was only a distant memory. But the silence of this indescribable place was broken by a sound so foreign and unexpected, a cry. This cry, filled with anguish and despair, tore the air, awakening in Kate a sense of unease and at the same time a drawing power. She could not tell where the sound was coming from, but every cell in her body sought its source, driven by the inexplicable feeling that this cry was intimately connected with her own soul and with the anxiety she felt about Edwin. So Kate became a traveler in the world of her subconscious, exploring spaces where the real and the unreal intertwined, creating a maze of feelings and emotions that she had to unravel to find answers. Answers that could help her save Edwin, or at least figure out what steps to take next. In this strange white room, where time seemed not to exist, Kate faced the very essence of her fears and hopes. As the crying continued, the sounds of suffering filling the space, Kate was seized by a sudden vision. In the depths of the snow-white space, devoid of any details, pictures appeared before her inner gaze, so vivid and tangible that it seemed as if she had been transported to another dimension. She saw herself weeping over the coffin of the recently deceased Edwin during his funeral. The air was saturated with sadness, and a heavy atmosphere of bereavement enveloped everyone present. Standing next to Kate was a man whose face was unfamiliar to her, but at the same time his features reminded her of Edwin, creating a sense of déjà vu, as if this stranger was a reflection of someone who had already left. Turning to him, she looked for answers, perhaps hope or at least words of comfort, but all she got in response was a cryptic remark that she would soon figure it all out. These words, full of understatement and mysticism, left her in a state of even greater confusion. Before she could find any answers, she woke up racked with a feeling of confusion and anxiety. Kate's consciousness was returning to reality, but the emotions she had experienced kept her awake, creating a kaleidoscope of feelings and premonitions in her soul. Waking up, Kate felt a wave of relief replaced by a new anxiety attack. Seeing Edwin's funeral left a heavy mark in her heart, a reminder that losing a loved one is a reality she doesn't want to face. However, despite all the emotions experienced in the dream and the stranger's cryptic words, deep down she felt that this was not just a meaningless dream. There was a certainty that this vision held some meaning, a key to understanding how to help Edwin, or at the very least how to keep him safe from the fate she had seen so vividly in her dream. But whatever the mystery behind the stranger's words, Kate was firmly convinced of one thing. She would do whatever it took to avoid a repeat of the pain and loss she'd experienced standing at Edwin's imaginary funeral. Once again, as soon as the first rays of the morning sun touched the cozy streets of their small town, Kate found the strength and determination to come to Edwin with the hope of changing his fateful decision. She stood before him, embodying a living flame of hope, trying with words to reach his heart, which seemed to have closed itself off from the world. She tried to open his eyes to how many things in life can be precious and meaningful, from a heartfelt connection with loved ones to the simple joy of having a pet, or even an attachment to some things that can evoke warm memories. Kate asked Edwin questions, trying to awaken some feelings in his soul, a desire to cling to life, to its small but important joys. But Edwin, whose heart was wrapped in a heavy chain of indifference to his own existence, looked at Kate with blank eyes. His answer was cold and lifeless, like a winter wind that brings only a sense of loneliness and emptiness. The words came out of Edwin's mouth that he found nothing in the world that he cared about, nothing worth continuing the struggle called life for. His words sounded like a judgment on himself, a rejection of all the possibilities that life still had to offer. This moment was a test for both of them, for Kate as a fight for her friend's soul, which she was unwilling to give up without a fight, and for Edwin as a last chance to hear and truly realize that his life could still be meaningful, even if he couldn't see it now. Kate's every word was filled with a desperate hope to reach his mind and heart, to find the very key that could open him to the forgotten feelings, to the desire to live and enjoy each new day. After a heavy silence had descended between them, like a thick fog hiding everything around them, Kate, gathering all her inner light, decided to ask Edwin the question she thought might be the key to this conversation. She asked him about his dream, that cherished goal that could be the anchor that kept him in this world. Irritation flashed across Edwin's face, and he replied with undisguised irritation in his voice that there were no things that could keep him on this earth. His words were harsh as an icy wind, cutting off any hope of saving him. The next moment, however, Kate, in spite of his resistance, bared her heart to him, boldly and frankly declaring that there was at least one reason why he should stay. The world around her seemed to freeze in anticipation of her words, and Edwin was curious to see what answer Kate would give. After a moment that seemed like an eternity, she opened her soul, confessing that this reason was herself, his tender feeling, the girl who loved him with all her heart. Those words hovered in the air, filled with tension and hope like the last ray of light in a dark room. But Edwin, whose heart had been hardened by many trials and disappointments, could not accept these words as they were intended. For him, a girl with whom his paths had crossed only 2 days ago could not be the basis for such a drastic change in his perception of life. His reaction was cautious, a look of uncertainty and disbelief at the possibility of such a quick and deep feeling. This moment was a test for both. For Kate, as the pinnacle of despair and courage at the same time, when she revealed her deepest feelings, and for Edwin, as an encounter with an unexpected confession that caused him confusion, and forced him to reflect on his own feelings and the reasons why he had so far chosen loneliness and despair. As Kate's musings swirled around the possibility of finding an alternative way to convince Edwin, she suddenly noticed something unusual that made her heart skip a beat. Behind Edwin's back, as if out of nowhere, a ghost appeared, a mysterious figure that Kate had seen in her dreams before. Her reaction was instantaneous. She pointed at this ghostly stranger while panic made her voice freeze in her throat. Edwin, turning around to see what Kate had so fearfully pointed out, came face to face with the ghost. But surprisingly, his horror was not caused by the mere fact of the ghost's presence. Rather, he was overwhelmed with shock and disbelief at the realization that Kate had the ability to see a ghost. This moment was the breaking point that revealed the underlying secrets and abilities that the characters in the story possessed. Edwin, consumed with shock and amazement, realized that the world they lived in was full of not only invisible threads of fate, but otherworldly forces capable of connecting the past to the present through an intricate weave of dreams and visions. Suddenly, amidst the flickering light and shadows, Edwin stopped, turning to Kate with a question that made her heart beat faster. With terror in his voice, he questioned her about whether she often encountered ghosts that seemed as real as themselves. Kate, somewhat stunned by this turn, admitted that this was the first time she had ever seen a ghost, unless you counted a strange dream that had once come to her in the night. Edwin seemed to be searching her words for confirmation of his secret fears or perhaps hopes. Without giving her time to think, he took Kate's hand as if he were seeking support in it or trying to be her defense against the uncharted threats that lurked for them both in the shadows of reality and the ghost world. His determined steps led them over the threshold of their ordinariness into a street where the world seemed different, full of mystery and unknown riddles. Edwin promised Kate that he would answer all her questions, just so long as she followed him, remaining calm and trusting him. His words sounded like a vow to hope that the mystery of the ghost encounter would soon be solved. When they reached the street, Edwin, undaunted by his determination to make sense of what was happening, approached Kate again with the question about the ghost. At that moment, however, Kate felt more than just curiosity about the supernatural. Her embarrassment at the unexpected touch and the fact that Edwin was holding her hand made her heart beat even faster. That moment, when time seemed to stand still, left a trace of tender warmth in her soul and a vague premonition of something important that was just beginning to unfold between them. The moment Edwin faced Kate's unexpected reaction to his words, he couldn't hide his amazement. His look of exasperation reflected bewilderment at how flippant she was about talking about the supernatural. With disbelief and surprise, he let go of her hand, as if trying to physically remove himself from the strangeness of the situation. Pointing to her words, Edwin emphasized that Kate had mentioned the ghost that had appeared to her in her dream. He listened to her story with interest, but also with a certain degree of skepticism. Kate, as if unfolding the pages of the mysterious book of her recent dream, told how the ghost, incarnated as the man from her dreams, had appeared to her. Her voice, filled with excitement and curiosity, asked a question that seemed as unusual as the dream itself. Had Edwin seen this ghost before, in reality? Edwin's reply was not long in coming. The sarcastic tone of his words, like an ornate crown to his doubts, made it clear that if he had encountered ghosts in real life, there would be no conversation about them at all. This moment, imbued with irony and misunderstanding, was a reflection of the deep gulf between Edwin's reality and Kate's imaginary world, in which ghosts and dreams became intermediaries between past and present. The intertwining of reality and mysticism reached its climax when Kate, genuinely concerned, asked Edwin a question that might have seemed absurd in any other context: whether the ghost was real. Edwin, despite his long interaction with the world of the supernatural, couldn't give her a definite answer. In his eyes, the importance of the matter receded into the background, giving way to more practical considerations. However, not wanting to dismiss her experiences as meaningless, he asked Kate to give a detailed description of the ghost she had seen in her dream. Kate's story was as unexpected as it was shocking. She said that the ghost she had seen looked remarkably like Edwin. This discovery struck Edwin to the core, causing him a mixture of disbelief and excitement. His mind flashed with questions and doubts about how it was possible that the figure from Kate's dream could be so similar to him. With irritation and a sharpness that contrasted sharply with the previous lightheartedness of the conversation, Edwin asked if Kate had been able to see the ghost's face. His question, full of impatience and perhaps even fear, seemed to reflect a deep desire to know how closely her vision could match reality and what that might mean for both of them. The moment Kate shared her observation about the ghost, Edwin seemed plagued by doubt. It was hard for him to imagine how a ghost's face could appear so distinctly. Kate herself also found herself confused, not knowing how to properly react to such a situation. The situation took an unexpected turn when Edwin uncovered a secret. The ghost turned out to be his late father, the king, who was supposedly determined to continue watching over his son's life even after his death. This revelation shed light on many questions and at the same time enveloped those present in an aura of mystery and devotion experienced by the ruling family over the centuries. When Kate heard that the ghost belonged to royalty, pictures of the past flashed through her mind. She remembered that memorable day when she had seen the king at the victory parade, his majestic image now finding an echo in that mysterious apparition. The realization that the face that seemed so familiar to her belonged to none other than the late monarch filled Kate with a mixture of respect and involuntary awe at the history of her own country and its rulers. Not only did this discovery shed light on the mystery of the ghost, but it also made Kate feel like she was part of something bigger, connecting the past to the present and future of the kingdom. Suddenly, the silence of their meeting was broken by a mysterious voice that sounded as if from nowhere. This voice, belonging to the ghost of the king, transformed the atmosphere in an instant, enveloping the space with a sense of uncertainty and excitement. Kate, suddenly feeling the glances of the past, could not hide her amazement and slight fear of the unknown. The ghost's words to his son were simple yet cryptic. Edwin must go on living. These words, echoing in the hearts of those present, shocked Kate. She repeated them aloud as if trying to convince herself of the reality of what was happening. Edwin, stunned by the suddenness of the moment, asked with anxiety and surprise in his voice if those were really his father's words. Everything seemed incredible, as if the world around them had changed its laws for a moment, allowing the past to seep into the present. But as suddenly as it had appeared, the king's ghost vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions and a sense of understatement. Kate, trying to make sense of what's going on, didn't hold back on asking why the king continues to pursue Edwin, wanting to help him. Her words, full of genuine bewilderment and concern, made Edwin look at her from a new angle. The resulting dialogue between them not only showed the depth of their understanding, but also revealed the unsolved mysteries linking Edwin's past to his present. Edwin, struck by Kate's unforeseen concern, asked a counter-question about her reasons for wanting to help him, thus expressing the mutual connection and importance of each of them in this extraordinary story. Searching for the right words, Kate expressed to Edwin with openness and genuine concern her deep desire to escape his suffering. Her words sounded sincere and touching, and there was so much genuine concern in them that Edwin fell into silence for a moment, as if weighing every sound of her voice. At last he found the strength to reply, admitting that he was willing to make a concession and comply with her request not to get into the carriage which, according to the prediction, was to be the cause of his misfortune. However, Edwin, a man of strong and resolute spirit, saw this not merely as a refusal of a certain action, but as an opportunity for bargaining, offering a condition which he felt could balance the interests of both parties. At the dawn of that fateful day when Edwin's carriage was prophesied to be plunged into the chaos of the coup d'etat, the moment came to test their promises. Edwin, contrary to the agreement, headed for his carriage as if to test fate or perhaps to test the firmness of his own convictions. At this moment, Kate, bridging the distance between herself and Edwin with incredible determination and speed, came running toward him. Her anger and frustration over his decision to break his word was so powerful that it seemed like it could change the very course of events. Kate was outraged, for Edwin, in her opinion, had flippantly ignored not only their agreement but also the possible consequences of his choices, which jeopardized not only his own fate but also their future together. Kate, a girl with a fine sense of justice, once again reminded Edwin of the importance of promises made. Edwin, whose spirit of freedom and unpredictability knew no bounds, released himself from her restraining gesture in a light rush of emotion and with a spark in his eyes. His smile, full of warmth and appreciation, like a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds, illuminated the moment of their farewell. He couldn't resist the opportunity to express his gratitude to Kate for her boundless care, emphasizing it with warm words that warmed his soul. As he handed the letter to the coachman, explaining that his journey lay in the opposite direction from the expected route of the carriage, the atmosphere was filled with a sense of farewell and the beginning of a new journey. Kate, standing on the threshold of a new day, watched the carriage drive away, and there was a certainty in her heart that Edwin would be safe. His decision not to follow the preordained path and choose his own route dispelled her fears about his well-being. The moment of truth came when Edwin, turning to Kate to ask how she could know the time of his departure, suddenly saw tears rolling down her cheeks. This moment, brimming with emotions and feelings that are hard to put into words, was a testament to the deep connection between two hearts. Kate's tears were not only a symbol of fear and relief at the same time, but also an indication of the depth of her feelings for Edwin, struggling with inner turmoil and fear of loss. Confusion swept over Edwin when confronted with the display of such deep feelings on Kate's part. His heart clenched at the sight of her tears, but he couldn't afford to witness her grief. An internal struggle made him order Kate to leave as his own emotions began to take over, and his desire to protect her from pain, even if it meant hiding his true feelings, became his priority. Kate, raised to be obedient and respectful of other people's wishes, followed his instructions without complaint. She turned to leave, trying to come to terms with the sudden separation. But then Edwin, suddenly seized by an impulse of concern and unwillingness to see her in this condition, threw his jacket over her head. The gesture, though it seemed somewhat unusual, was full of care and a desire to protect her from the coldness of the world around her. Edwin, trying to conceal the concern bubbling up inside, hastily explained the action with a desire not to see her distressed face, not even giving her a moment to express her gratitude. After this momentary but meaningful exchange of gestures of concern, Edwin withdrew, leaving Kate alone. Despite her outward loneliness, she felt an extraordinary warmth from his jacket enveloping her shoulders that filled her heart with joy and comfort. This moment, although full of complex emotions, ultimately left Kate in a state of happiness, because even though it was difficult in parting, she felt the care and attention that is so important to every person. As soon as Edwin was out of sight, Kate, still feeling the warmth of his jacket on her shoulders, sank into reflection on recent events. Her thoughts returned to that crucial moment when their unusual pact had been made. Edwin, with manly determination in his eyes, promised Kate that he would not get into the carriage that, according to legend, could be his death noose. In return for his promise, Kate agreed to be a liaison between Edwin and the netherworld, relaying the words of his ghost father, for Edwin himself could not hear his afterlife voice. This treaty was their secret bargain, a promise they both valued. Kate especially, for her heart was filled with joy at the realization that by not getting into the carriage, Edwin would escape death. She felt like his protector, the guardian of his life, even if it only seemed like a small victory over the steady march of time and fate. However, Edwin, always realistic and insightful, did not hesitate to remind Kate that death can catch up with a person in a multitude of ways, and postponing one inevitability does not guarantee eternal life. Fate, as an invisible weaver of destinies, will continue its work regardless of human plans and desires. Nevertheless, Kate derived a modicum of comfort and happiness from the deal. She did her best to protect Edwin, even if it was only a temporary reprieve from his fate. Deep down, she believed that every moment they spent together, every moment she could shield him from danger, brought them closer to some bright future where death and fate had no power over their destinies. That morning, when dawn was just beginning to light up the sky with its first rays, Kate, feeling the excitement of the upcoming events, suddenly realized that she had overslept. Her heart beat faster, and her thoughts swirled in a chaotic dance of confessions of her own inattention and the urgent need to leave the cozy nest of her room as soon as possible. She was well aware that her recent victory over time was only illusory, and the real test was just beginning. Kate's mind was already making plans for how she would use every minute in the library, absorbing knowledge like precious nectar. But as she slipped out of her room, she encountered an unexpected obstacle in her way: Ron, who met her at the doorstep like a guardian. Ron, whose meeting had come as a complete surprise to Kate, looked a little embarrassed. His presence at this early hour was as much a surprise to Kate as her own tardiness. Escorting her into the living room, Ron tried to lighten the atmosphere with an apology. He was sure Kate knew about his visit, assuming someone had already informed her. There was sincerity and slight confusion in his voice, for he did not want to become the cause of her anxiety. Ron revealed the nature of his surprise appearance by announcing an order that had been placed especially for Kate, a dress intended to be a birthday present for her. This confession added a special flavor to the events of the morning, intertwining the bustle of collecting with the soft light of anticipation. In every word Ron said, he felt the desire to surprise Kate, to give her not just a dress, but a piece of his own attention and participation in her life. The mention of the birthday acted on Kate like a magic key that opened a long-forgotten chest of memories. In the depths of her heart, she had long since lost the warm feeling of anticipation for this day, for years on end, the gifts she had been given seemed but a pale reflection of formality, devoid of true attention and care. These things carried no warmth, no whispered stories in her ear about how much joy and love had gone into choosing them. They were just things, lifeless symbols of tradition, unable to touch her heart. When Ron noticed Kate's face go pale at his words, he hurriedly apologized. His intentions were far from wanting to stir unpleasant emotions in her, or remind her of the sense of loneliness that so often lurked from celebrating without genuine care and attention. Ron realized that he might have touched a sensitive string in her soul, reminding her of a day that many greeted surrounded by loved ones, but which for Kate was only a reminder of how little warmth she received from those around her in those moments. Nevertheless, Kate made the decision not to delve into her thoughts and boldly stepped forward, agreeing to Ron's suggestion to begin taking measurements for the dress. There was more to this gesture than just preparing for the holiday. It was a step toward embracing the idea that change is possible and that care and attention can come from the most unexpected sources. For Kate, it was an opportunity to open a new page in her story, a page where gifts became not just objects but symbols of the genuine care and attention Ron wanted to give her. In the back of her mind, Kate was immersed in a sea of doubt and reflection, pondering the motives of Ron, who had once been her lawfully wedded husband. Her mind wrapped around the idea that the marriage had been arranged not out of sincere feelings, but out of Ron's desire to expand the boundaries of his boutique, to turn it from a small store into a thriving fashion empire. Kate couldn't escape the conviction that even years later, his goals hadn't changed, and he was eager to fulfill his ambitions, no matter what feelings Kate now harbored for him. There was no longer a shred of her former love left in her heart, only irritation at his unquenchable persistence and relentlessness in pursuit of his goals. After much deliberation, the moment Kate had waited so long for had arrived. Ron, professionally and with unfailing attention to detail, completed the process of taking measurements, a step that was necessary for his next project. Kate, gathering her strength, walked him home. It seemed like an eternity, filled with heavy memories of the times when Ron had been the source of her happiness, the ray of light in her life. Now, every step was a reminder of how far they had drifted apart, how their relationship had changed from harmony to an ongoing confrontation between two worlds that had once been one. Kate noticed that it was already quite late, and she was already definitely late for Edwin. While Kate headed frantically toward her new haven, the library, Ron was alone with her house, which held 1,000 memories. He cast one last look at the place, in which every stone and every window seemed familiar, smiling the mysterious smile of a man whose plans had begun to bear fruit. That smile hid more than mere satisfaction. It was a reflection of deeply planned intentions that seemed to be beginning to come true. Arriving at the library, a place where every book was a portal to another world, Kate found that Edwin was not there. Instead of meeting him, her attention was drawn to one book that drew her to it like a magnet. After opening the pages of this literary creation, Kate immersed herself in the love story of Bella and Arthur, described with such passion and depth that the world around ceased to exist. Their love was so powerful and all-consuming that even Arthur's death was no barrier to their feelings. Bella was ready to follow her lover into the other world, but fate had ordered otherwise. Arthur returned to her in the form of a ghost carrying an important message: Bella must live. These words echoed in Kate's heart, filling her soul with new emotions and making her rethink many things in her own life. The moment Kate learned of Bella and Edwin's mysterious reversal of fortunes, she was overcome with deep amazement. It was as if fate drove them in a circle where both sought solace in the thought of death, but were brought back to life by the appearance of the ghosts of people who were close to them. This discovery gave Kate a sense of mysterious connectedness of events, as if invisible threads of fate had woven their lives into a single pattern. The next meeting with Edwin turned into an ordeal for Kate. The atmosphere was heated to the limit because she did not know how to find the words to apologize for her unintentional lateness the day before. She felt guilty and couldn't find the right words to ease the tension. Edwin, on the other hand, was clearly upset. His resentment turned to anger, and he was unwilling to listen to Kate's excuses, accusing her of not keeping her promises. He had expected her to come at the appointed time, as he had something important to share, but now there was only irritation and resentment in his voice at her for betraying his trust. The meeting was a storm of emotions for both of them. Kate, trying to justify herself, felt a heavy weight of guilt on her heart, and Edwin, in turn, could not hide the depth of his disappointment. This conversation was a test of their relationship, where words proved sharp as a razor, cutting through the silence between them, and each began to look for a way to reconcile, though they realized that trust was a fragile thing, so hard to rebuild after any crash. Kate, still under the impression of surprise that Edwin had waited for her, felt mixed emotions. Her exasperation was quickly replaced by surprise when Edwin revealed his feelings. He admitted that he hadn't really expected her visit. His irritation was not so much at her absence as at the broken promise. In that moment, Kate realized that Edwin valued sincerity and trust above all else. However, upon learning that Kate was unaware of the gravity of the situation, Edwin found the strength to forgive her. This gesture of reconciliation on his part was a bridge over the rift that had appeared between them. Trying to turn the conversation to a safer topic, Kate asked a question about the book Edwin was reading. She suggested that his interest in the book might be due to the similarity of his own experiences with the fate of Bella, the heroine of the work. This question struck a nerve, for the book held deep personal meaning for Edwin. To Kate's surprise, he shared that the book was not just a literary interest, but a legacy and memory of his father. This confession revealed a new facet to their relationship, allowing Kate to see Edwin from a different angle, not as a man consumed by his own problems, but as a son honoring his father's memory and preferences. This exchange of views and memories was a pivotal moment in their relationship, opening the door to deeper and more sincere communication. Kate realized that each person carries a whole world of memories, meanings, and experiences that deserve to be understood and respected. This conversation allowed them both to look at each other in a new way, to appreciate the depth of their feelings and the significance of the past that shapes the present. The moment Kate suggested that a clue to the mysterious connection between Edwin and his father might be hiding in the pages of a book, the atmosphere between them became tense. This idea that their fates might be intertwined with the plot of their father's favorite book stirred Edwin's emotions. He couldn't hide his outrage that Kate was trying to get into the most secret corners of his personal tragedy, to which he felt she should have no access. Edwin took her words as an invasion of his space, as an attempt to solve his painful riddle without invitation. In a fit of anger, he emphatically declared that Kate should confine herself to passing words from his dead father and not attempt to enter into his personal experiences. Edwin was so annoyed that he even questioned the likelihood of a ghost that could mediate between him and the departed world. However, the moment Edwin was about to leave, Kate did something that made him freeze in place. With equanimity and confidence, she pointed to the ghost, who seemed to have been invisible to Edwin until that moment. This act not only stopped him from leaving the conversation, but also forced him to rethink his views on the situation. The sudden appearance of the ghost was irrefutable proof that the spirit world and questions about the past and heritage cannot simply be dismissed or ignored. This moment was a turning point in their interaction, bringing a new level of understanding and perhaps the beginning of a path to unraveling the deep secrets linking Edwin to his father and the mysterious book at the center of the story.